All right. So I'm going to start recording. I want to make sure that you guys can watch this later. It's going to be a little bit of drinking from a fire hose, but what we are talking about is, what is this new Amazon algorithm? What can we gather from how it works? And what is most important? What should we be looking out for? And starting to pivot according to Amazon's new requirements. How do we potentially increase the restock limits, and how do we actually, make sure that we are able to get all of our inventory in? What are our priorities, and how do we have to adapt to fit this new storage type? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a quick screen share again. If you have questions, you can type it in the Q&A, type it in the chat, and I am very happy to answer them. All right, let's do this. All right, so storage type inventory strategies, understanding and managing according to the new storage algorithm. Yes, so things are definitely changing. We have been having a bit of a struggle adjusting to it. I know that the community has kind of been in a little bit of an uproar about this, and it's to be expected. It's actually a complete shift of the entire way that we look at inventory, and it actually makes marketers have to look at inventory as well. It kind of marries these two as the same type of a task. Really quick, just about me, wanted to kind of jump in. For those of you new to some of my webinars or who haven't really been familiar with me, my name is Chelsea Cohen. I've been selling on Amazon since 2014. I started doing speaking and consulting and work as an Amazon copywriting expert and focusing on conversion and working with some 7- and 8-figure sellers, started an agency. But what really started to hit me in the face about 2017, I really started noticing that my profit was starting to dwindle, essentially because of inventory problems, right? I'd have, stock outs. I would have times where I would, over order a product, paying additional storage fees that I didn't really need to paying loan fees, overestimating or underestimating. So I realized that a lot of my profit was being wasted in inventory management mistakes. So I decided I essentially needed to, get a handle on this inventory thing. So in diving into inventory management, I really got an idea of what it really took to put together inventory. And I started looking at tools that could actually help me to do this. The problem was that these tools didn't seem to solve the problems that I was trying to solve. Sometimes they would work, sometimes they wouldn't. They would work for some SKUs, wouldn't work for others. They weren't allowing me to manipulate the data based on what I knew was going to be happening in my business. So they would take past data and they would make some sort of a recommendation, and I was just supposed to trust that. I have an accounting background, so numbers has always been a big thing for me, and being able to understand numbers, and the fact that I wasn't able to understand what was going on and why they were giving me the suggestions they were giving me was really frustrating. So I decided to take it upon myself. I said, maybe I can just build something. Maybe I can find someone to build something for me. And I actually did. I found this guy, Dan Fernandez. And Dan Fernandez is the co-founder of Thomason.com. He is a serial SaaS builder, that's software as a service builder. And so we got together and we built SoStocked. Essentially, we've spent the last 3 years working with Amazon sellers, 6, 7, and 8-figure Amazon sellers, talking to them about inventory management, looking into their systems, looking at the spreadsheets that they're using and what they're actually doing and what problems they're having. What are the biggest pitfalls that they're falling into in inventory management? So being able to identify those things and then build a tool that helps to overcome those things. It's something that works the way an Amazon seller thinks. A lot of Amazon sellers would try software, go back to spreadsheets. And so we've just decided, well, we're going to think like a spreadsheet and think like Amazon sellers think. And that's what the tool is that we've built. And that's a little bit about me and how I got into the inventory management space. All right, so storage type limits explained. This is what you really wanted to talk about. You don't really want to talk about me, want to talk about storage type limits. All right, so we're going to talk about what is most important and what isn't as important as maybe it used to be. Because obviously things have shifted and priorities have shifted with Amazon. And so we're going to talk about the most important things, right? All right, so what matters most? The things that matter most for Amazon are turnover or sell-through and utilization, right? They want to have space. They want to have the ability to actually check things in on time. We've noticed a lot that Amazon's check-in times have really lengthened out. And that's partly because people will send in so much inventory that they'll have to find room for it. And so they are very concerned, you know, in their task as our warehouse, they're very concerned with utilization and with turnover or sell-through. So those are the two things that are most important and the things that you should be looking at as well. All right, so we're going to talk about exactly how Amazon calculates these two numbers and how you should potentially be gearing a lot of your new inventory management practices to being able to improve. Amazon is, you know, in some of the things that they have put out, some of the announcements that they've put out regarding these policies and essentially regarding the policy of decreasing some of these limits, right? They had the limits come out, everything shifted on the 22nd of April. And then on the 16th of May, they actually reduced those limits. A lot of you guys saw that those limits actually dropped. And part of the reason behind that Amazon gave was because they're trying to be able to check everything in for Prime Day. So they, in order to be able to do that, started putting a squeeze on sellers. So that's one of the reasons that they said is occurring. So hopefully, given that, we are going to see faster check-in times. We will have to see, we'll have to hold our breath and see, but that's essentially what they're trying to accomplish with some of this. All right, so sell-through. So yes, this is a key metric of Amazon, right? This is one of the things that is most important to us. And they really no longer want to be a storage facility. They always intended to be a distribution center, right? So what that means is that they don't want to continue to store the stuff that's not moving. So they're penalizing a lot of sellers who have stuff that just isn't moving. That's why they're looking at sell-through, and they're also looking at utilization. So if we look at exactly how they calculate sell-through, and Amazon will tell you, so sell-through has a lot to do with the restock limits. There are other factors, of course, surrounding restock limits, including future sales for seasonal products, Prime Day deals. If you have a Prime Day deal scheduled, they'll try to accommodate for that. So there are other things that are being factored into that restock limits algorithm, but sell-through is one of the major ones. All right, so this is how Amazon calculates sell-through, and you can actually pull this if you go into the inventory dashboard and you look at the restock page. They actually have a little link that you can hover over about FBA restock, and it explains this is exactly from the Amazon website. So it says that your FBA rolling 90-day sell-through rate is the number of units sold and shipped over the past 90 days divided by the average number of units available at fulfillment centers during that time. So a lot of places, and traditionally 30 days is the number that is looked at for sell-through. Now this is 90 days. So in this case, the past 3 months of what you did affected your sell-through rate. So you actually have a longer time period to get that off of your track record and to get that off of your sell-through. So what you do now will have ramifications into the future for the next 90 days, and that will stay on your record. So that's something to keep in mind, and why I'm going to actually be recommending some of the things that I'm going to be recommending as soon as possible. Again, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and type them in the chat. You can go ahead and type them in the Q&A, and I will go ahead and get to them. All right, sell-through. So to take that definition of sell-through, Amazon's definition of sell-through, we look at what the formula is. So we have units sold or shipped within 90 days, and then we have it divided by the average units available, and that equals sell-through. So if you've been wondering how they get that number, right, when you go into your inventory performance dashboard and you see the number that represents your sell-through and wonder how they calculated that, this is how they essentially calculated it. So they have so for example, if you have 9,000 units that you sold within 90 days, and on average, you keep 3,000 units, then your score, your sell-through rate would be 3. So you would be essentially turning over your inventory on a monthly basis, right? Because 90 days divided by those 3 months would be 3,000 units. So that's essentially how that would work. And then if, for example, you sold the same 9,000 units, but you kept 9,000 units in stock, you would have a sell-through of 1. That would essentially be a quarterly turnover. So Amazon would rather you be turning your inventory over monthly than quarterly. And so that's something to start wrapping your head around. They don't want you to send all that inventory. So people who are buying a bunch of inventory from China, sending it all directly to FBA, that's no longer something that Amazon wants to have happen. They're kind of forcing all of us, even though we were sold on the idea that we never had to have our own warehouse, they are now shifting that, and we're now, as professional sellers, having to keep inventory at external warehouses. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're still only using FBA, you want to start to rethink that, whether it's a local warehouse or it's your warehouse in China that sometimes can be willing to hold things for a prolonged period of time. The idea is that you're going to have to potentially change the infrastructure of your logistics. All right, and then there's the utilization. So one seller actually commented, and I thought this was a very good analogy, that restock limits are kind of like credit scores. Amazon doesn't really want to give you more storage if you're not properly utilizing the storage you already have. So if your utilization is extremely high and you're still trying to get more storage space, Amazon's not really going to give that to you. If you have a quarterly turnover and you haven't had a history of being able to turn over the stuff that you've sent in, they're not really going to want to give you more of that, right? They look at whether a seller is able to turn over a lot of product, and they are judging you based on your ability to turn over that product, okay? So that's kind of what you're getting. It's kind of like, you have a debt to credit ratio. This is kind of like that. A creditor is not going to give you more credit when you have a lot of debt. They'll want to give you more credit when they see that you're good with credit, right? It's kind of a good analogy. So utilization also can have a direct impact upon sell-through, right? If we know that sell-through works in a particular way, right, that it looks at the average number of available units, we know that utilization starts to have a factor on sell-through as well. All right, so this is how utilization is calculated. Utilization would be looking at your FBA available inventory plus reserved inventory plus any open shipments. So that makes up your utilization quantity, right? That number that you see at the bottom of your inventory performance. You can scroll down, you go to your inventory dashboard, to the inventory performance page, and then scroll down. You can click and see what is your restock limit and what is your utilization quantity. If you feel like you have more than you think that you potentially have, there might be something a little bit screwy with one of these numbers. So we'll get to that, how you will actually be able to handle that. So you got FBA, available inventory plus reserve inventory plus open shipments divided by your restock limit and multiplied by 100 will give you your utilization percentage. So that's a lot to wrap your head around. So let's look at some numbers. All right, so we have this FBA. This is our utilization quantity, right? This is our FBA plus reserve plus open shipments, and then divided by your restock limit. You multiply that by 100, and that'll give you your utilization percentage. So for example, if you have 3,000 units combined as your utilization quantity, and you divide it by your restock limit of 10,000, then that would essentially be 30% utilization. 30% utilization is also like a sell-through, essentially, give or take, it'd be a sell-through of about 3, and your turnover would be monthly at that point. Similarly, if you have 9,000 units and your restock limit is 10, that would be a 90% utilization. Your turnover would be more like quarterly. And so that's something that Amazon doesn't really love to see. That's something that is kind of shifting. We used to be able to do that a lot, and nowadays it's not necessarily what Amazon wants to see. So if you are at the end and you are basically maxed out, you might want to look at what you have been selling. If you stocked out, Amazon's not going to factor that in. So that's going to hurt you because your sell-through is going to be a little bit injured from that stock out. And we can talk about that in a little bit. We do have a quick question. Let's see. So Lisa asks, how much inventory days are you keeping at Amazon? In transit to Amazon, inventory levels at 3PL warehouse, how much buffer stock can you maintain on max ship quantity over max inventory level? Right, so we'll get to some of the details of this question, but essentially the buffer stocks are going to be lower at FBA based on what Amazon is wanting. And so we're recommending, what we used to recommend was 30 days. We'll talk about exactly what we are recommending now. And it's a little bit of a gray area, but we'll get into some details on that. So buffer stock will be a little bit, shifted. And then I do recommend that you're now splitting a lot of that buffer stock between your FBA and your warehouses. All right, so what doesn't matter so much? So IPI limits used to be extremely important. Those don't matter as much anymore, right? A portion of that does, right? The sell-through does, excess inventory does, which essentially are two sides of the same coin. That's always been the case. But your IPI limits don't matter so much unless you have a score under 500. So as of July 1st, if you have a score of under 500, you'll have a limit on your storage. Anything over 500, you should have unlimited storage. Storage does not equate to restock limits, right? We have unlimited storage, we have a restock limit. You probably have unlimited storage, you have a restock limit. So it doesn't matter that much, but you do want to keep your score over 500 so you don't also get slammed with storage restrictions, which can hurt especially people who sell oversized products. Storage volume doesn't matter. Again, you could have unlimited storage and you could still have major restrictions that are hurting your account and hurting your performance. Unless, of course, you have the under 500. And then restock recommendations don't matter. Amazon, if you look in there now, Amazon will probably be recommending that you send in more inventory than the restock limits are allowing. So restock recommendations can actually be changed. There are settings in there that you can change and you can adjust. Restock limits aren't, restock recommendations by Amazon aren't super dialed in, and Amazon's also not looking at when you stocked out or if you had a sales spike based on some occurrence that's not going to repeat itself. Fantastic. All right, so now you want to know what are the things that you should be doing knowing this information. What are the best practices? Some of these things you might have already known and done, but potentially not. So I want to mention all of them. All right, first off, delete unnecessary inbound shipments immediately. So because we've talked about that inbound shipments have something to do with your utilization and potentially your sell-through rate, it's important to delete those shipments. If you're looking at your utilization and it looks high, you might have some shipments that you created a while back that are still open. So go ahead and delete those. The sooner you delete those, the better, because if it is a factor in your sell-through rate, then that's again going to carry through for the entire 90 days as part of your average units. Removal orders and fire sales. So this is the time when you start looking at any of your excess inventory if you haven't already done that, right? Getting rid of slow sellers, and what that will do is it will free up storage space. It will improve those metrics. Consider removing anything that's more than 60 days. We used to recommend 90 days, but because of what Amazon has imposed, 60 days is probably safe. You can start keeping more inventory perhaps in your local warehouse. I know the expenses, the problem with what is happening, guys, that you have to be prepared for is there's going to be a little bit of a margin crunch because Amazon is forcing us to take on some of these expenses. There's going to be more carton fees because there's going to be more cartons that we're not sending directly into Amazon. They're being handled by warehouses, more storage fees potentially. So we have to start to get smart about how we're handling things. But removal orders will get the job done quickly. You can quickly get some of that excess inventory and remove it from your FBA warehouse. A fire sale would be probably a little slower, but it could have some upside potential in addition to what a removal order would do. First of all, it's going to cost you less. It's not going to be, potentially it's going to be more profitable for you to move it through a fire sale. It might take longer, or it might not be possible based on what the product is. But the other thing that it's going to do, it's going to not only clear up space, but it's also going to improve your sell-through rate because Amazon's looking at your total sales. So it's going to improve your sell-through rate, and potentially that's going to mean improved restock rates in the near future. The other thing to check out is Amazon's got a new liquidation program. They are charging fees for it, but you can read a little bit more about the details. Essentially, you will create a removal order and Amazon will charge you. They'll send it to a liquidator, and then the liquidator within 60 to 90 days will pay you 5 to 10% of the value of those units. So that's something to check out. Had a quick question. With Amazon's new shipment creation flow, there doesn't seem to be any way to actually delete a shipment. If you know, so I had that problem too. I tried to delete my shipments. I had some shipments that were taking up some space, and when I went to delete them, I got an error. What I did was we just called Amazon and we had them do it manually. So that's what you're going to want to do. If you can't delete the shipment, call them up and they will do it for you. Okay, there's another question regarding slow moving inventory. Let's say, for example, we have a product that is super slow moving and we're better off simply liquidating it. What liquidation channel do you recommend? I'm referring to both inventory that's physically at Amazon and also inventory that's in our outside party warehouse. I would say, you can give Amazon's liquidation program a try. I used to know someone in the liquidation space. I would have to check if he's still in that space or if he potentially knows somebody. You can reach out to me. You can actually reach me at sostock.com/connect. You'll find my socials there and things like that in my email. Just go ahead and reach out to me and I can ask him. And if he's not still in the liquidation business, then he probably knows people who are. And then what am I considering a fire sale? 75% off the normal price. If you drop the price too low, too quickly, you might get your product suspended. So that's something that has been happening, with some of these fire sales. So you might offer a coupon or, or you might slowly bring it down until you find that sweet spot. But it might take a few days to find what that pricing is and what pricing you need to set for these fire sales to keep Amazon from suspending that. They'll suspend it and they'll say, potential low price error, because they think that maybe there's something happened that is wrong. They used to not do that. So it's a good feature, but it's starting to kind of hurt us when we're trying to actually get rid of some of that inventory. And then the other thing that you might need to do is to throw some ad money at it as well if it's got no ranking. All right, okay, smaller shipments more frequently. This is the one that we don't really want to hear, because this is going to be more money. It's going to cost us more money to do smaller shipments more frequently. But, instead of shipping 3 months worth of inventory, 4 months worth of inventory into Amazon, we're going to have to, do it once a month, twice a month, something like that. At the very most, I would say, every 2 months sending something in, because the smaller shipments more frequently is going to increase your sell-through, and that's what Amazon wants to see. They want to see that turnover. They want to see that you're good at turning your inventory over, and that potentially should trigger Amazon to want to give you more space. So it's kind of ironic. We're all trying to get higher restock limits, and at the same time, we're trying to keep our, we have to start gearing towards thinking about keeping our utilization down, so we're not maxing out those limits. So, when you max out those limits, you can't seem to get more. So thinking in terms of smaller shipments more frequently, that's what Amazon wants to see, right? What it does also, if the benefit of having that, getting that utilization down, getting those restock limits up, and not using all of that space, is that if you do want to launch more products, if you are trying to scale more quickly, and it will help you to have that extra space to sell through. And then the other thing is that if you have seasonal products and Amazon's algorithm is not picking up on your season coming up, you're going to have trouble with the restock limits. All right, faster FBA shipping times. So this is something that, we used to put everything on a slow boat to, from China, and, we would essentially label everything. It doesn't mean you can't do ocean freight. It just means that you should potentially not be labeling your FBA shipments before you put them on the boat. You should be putting them on the boat and then labeling them when they get to your third-party warehouse. It's going to eat up your utilization as soon as you get those labels, right? As soon as you create that FBA shipment, then it's going to keep for 30, 45, however long it's taking right now. It's going to eat up that utilization space, and it's also going to affect your sell-through. You've got, thousands of units that are not selling for 45 days, while Amazon thinks in your sell-through algorithm, Amazon thinks they're potentially being available for sale at any minute now. So their algorithms are a little bit faulty, and creating these labels will be harmful to utilization and sell-through. All right, so consider, sending your inventory to a third-party warehouse, labeling them to FBA. From there, of course, it means extra fees, because you have all those, check-in fees at your FBA warehouse, those labeling fees. And so it starts to, as prices come down on air freight, it seems like I would never say this, but for smaller products, it might start making more sense eventually to send smaller portions by air. If you want to keep stuff at your Chinese warehouse for free, sometimes they'll let you do that. Keep things for free at your Chinese warehouse, and then send little batches to Amazon. If that financially makes sense to you, you should run the numbers and see how much is it going to cost you to store them at your third-party warehouse locally, and also all of those extra carton fees and labeling fees. How much is that going to cost you versus air freight? Air freight's extremely expensive right now, but as it comes down, it might make more sense. Just always run the numbers and never assume that air freight is always the most expensive option when you have to do this pit stop in your third-party warehouse now that Amazon has these crazy restrictions. All right, this is a quick tip. So, to save on some of these warehousing fees, you should consider increasing the number of units per carton. That will immediately have an impact on your per carton fees. You'll have less cartons, and you'll have for each fee that you have, for each per carton fee, because you have more units per carton, each fee will be more evenly distributed in when you do your calculation. We did one product that, one kind of moderately selling product, we did the calculations on adjusting from 8 units, I think it was 8 units per carton to 10 units per carton, and it was an $8,000 per year savings. So that's something to keep in mind. Ask your supplier if it is possible to safely pack your inventory differently so that you have more units per carton. All right. So in terms of your next steps, we talked about this very briefly, lowering your FBA buffer stocks. This doesn't mean lowering all of your buffer stocks, just FBA buffer stocks. Potentially shifting that link between, some people have only had FBA buffer stock and they never really had warehouse buffer stock. Maybe increasing that and shifting that split between FBA and warehouse buffer stock. Something to keep in mind. We used to recommend 30 days of FBA buffer stock. I think 15 days is as the buffer stock would be something closer to shoot for. And that means essentially, the buffer stock, for those who don't really follow what buffer stock is, it's that extra bit of inventory that you always keep. It's like a fake zero, right? Once I get to 15 days, I'm sending a shipment in. However, this is a balancing act. We did say that in recent updates, Amazon claimed that they are trying to increase these check-in times. 15 days of buffer stock is not going to do you any good if they're taking 3 weeks to check inventory in. So don't automatically shift to 15 days. I would say slowly creep it down as you can start to trust those check-in times, right? You don't want to stock out. That's the last thing that you want to have happen. But as you get to being able to trust those check-in times are getting faster and faster, start to creep your buffer stock down, right? Something to start to shift, and then potentially creeping your warehouse buffer stock up to make up for that balance change. And of course, always have a backup plan. So this is essentially what has been happening to a lot of people. This is what I'm talking about. Amazon taking weeks to check in inbound shipments. The product stocks out while waiting for Amazon to check in. Your sales decrease because of this. Your sell-through decreases. Your restock limit goes down, and your sales get the ability to send more inventory in decreases, and your likelihood of stocking out increases as well. So it's this what we call the seller stock out cycle. So above all, don't stock out. But if you do, you should be switching to FBM. So if you do stock out at Amazon, you should have a backup to switch to being able to fulfill. You should not have Amazon be your only distribution center. Don't ever send all your inventory to Amazon. If they don't check your inventory in, you should still be able to deliver to your customers. They should not be, even if they're your only sales channel and you're not selling through any other platform, they should not be your only distribution channel. So you should be getting in touch with the fulfillment center. I can send out in the replay, when I send out the replay, I can send a link to some of these fulfillment centers and warehouses that we have. But switching to FBM is important. And the reason is that the stock out, if you stock out at FBA, the FBM sales will still add and contribute to your restock limits. So it will be as if you didn't stock out, or your sales may be lowered that little bit because you didn't have Prime. But you, instead of stocking out, which really can hurt and drop that limit, you are still able to maintain a bit. There are people who don't know this, so it's something definitely to know and to line up and to make sure that you have this other resource available to you. Had a quick question here. Would you suggest immediately utilizing freed up space once your limits improve? Since it's very likely that they'll drop any day. It's a good question. Amazon doesn't want you to utilize space that you're not going, you're going to affect your utilization. You're going to affect your sell-through rate. And so your score is actually going to get worse. You know, one of the major markers that Amazon uses to decide whether or not, you know, you should have those limits. If your scores are decreasing because you're sending too much inventory in because you're afraid that they're going to decrease it, that would be, you know, kind of against what Amazon is trying to get us to do. So I wouldn't suggest that. They did lower them. They made that announcement. They lowered them really right before Prime Day. So I would say it shouldn't be a practice, but if you have Prime Day coming up or something like that, if you have a reason to do it, send it in. If you are, you know, launching new products, or if you have a sale coming up or Prime Day is coming up, that might be a use case where you would send that inventory in. But I wouldn't just send in, you know, 3-4 months worth of inventory because Amazon's letting you. It again goes against what they're looking at, which is utilization and sell-through. They're trying to reward people that have good utilization and good sell-through. So just having the inventory there just to have it isn't necessarily, you know, going to benefit your account. Okay, so yeah, we talked about it. Create a backup plan. Make sure that you have another distribution channel. Make sure that you have a fulfillment center. And if you don't really feel comfortable with what to ask or how to find out a good fulfillment center, there's a lot of fulfillment centers and warehouses out there that are struggling and having problems and closing down, surprisingly, in this time. So you can actually go to YouTube, type in "so stocked" as one word, find our channel, and then you can actually find, we have a warehousing webinar that talks about how not to get screwed by a warehouse or fulfillment center, right? Because there's a lot of little tricky things they like to do in terms of fees. So you want to understand what you're getting into before you send all of that inventory over there. All right, and then to wrap it up, inventory-minded marketing. I've been talking about this a lot. This is a concept that we have developed and are pushing around the fact that marketing teams, they really no longer can only be focused on marketing. They have to become responsible for understanding inventory and also being responsible for marketing across the entire catalog. It used to be that marketers would focus on the best sellers, and it was okay to just leave products that didn't really do well, and just when they sell out, they sell out. That's not the game anymore. So marketers actually have to aggressively market across the entire catalog, and can't forget about these slow sellers. I like to say that a good marketing plan turns bad really fast. When it's so successful that it stalks you out, it'll impact your business very much. So there are certain coordination points that have to be in place between the marketing team and the inventory team. So the vital coordination points are, there's marketing. Marketing needs to give inventory their marketing plans to vet out against inventory before they jump in and execute. That's a step that's been missing from a lot of Amazon businesses, and one of the major things that cause stockouts. You know, I mentioned that we've talked to hundreds of sellers across the past 3 years, and this was one of the top things that was found, is that marketing and inventory don't necessarily communicate well. Okay, and then inventory needs to provide certain reports. Stockout risk report should be provided weekly or monthly, depending on your business and the speed of business. Also slow sellers report and a liquidation report. So these things really need to be provided. Let me jump into our so stock tool. I know we've got some so stocked guys here, so I wanted to jump into our tool and just show you some of the reports, because some of you might not realize the extent of reports that can be developed inside of so stocked. So you've got a so stocked or a stockouts future report. Essentially, that's filtering to look at anything where there might be a potential upcoming stock out. This report should be sent. You can download it, and this report can be sent to your marketing team on a weekly or a monthly basis to let them know to pump the brakes on some of these things, right? You can even jump into the forecasting. They give you their plan. if you weren't on one of the calls, SoStock has a marketing template. So if you're interested in that marketing template, I can send you the link on how to download the marketing template as well with this replay. And you can get that marketing template, and then the inventory team can plug in all of the marketing plans into these calculations. So if there's a PPC campaign that is going to increase a certain product or a certain set of products, right? If you tag, certain Halloween products or something like that, you can actually add all of those plans, all of those marketing plans into the calculation, and you'll see that these products, oh, this product's going to stock out, and this product, is going to be okay. And then you can, after plugging that in, you can push this stock outs report, and it'll have all of that data as to which products are going to be stocking out. So you would have a stock out report. You would also have an overstock report, right? And this can be adjusted. This one is 90 days of supply. We can adjust that now to 60 days and save that. And it's going to pull up all the products that now the marketing team should be marketing these products. These products are now considered overstocked products, and they should be pushed out really quickly. So now the marketing team has a game plan. They know that they're going to slow down certain sales, or they're going to adjust their marketing plan for certain products to avoid stockouts. They know that there are products that they're going to start a overstock campaign where they're going to push them. Maybe they'll lower the price. Maybe they'll do a special marketing campaign. Maybe they'll do a coupon campaign. But now they have an objective for these SKUs that used to be just scragglers that would be kind of avoided, right? Because their job now is to clear up some of that space for you. The marketer's job now has a lot to do with inventory. And then, of course, you can have your slow sellers campaign or your slow sellers report. It looks at the velocity. So if you have a product that you want to get rid of because it's just selling too slowly, then you can look at the adjusted velocity. Say anything below 5, for example, maybe in your business that is beneficial. You can even add, a low velocity, and then your FBA, and then your FBA days available, right? Days of supply on Amazon, is say greater than 60. You would narrow that down to see what you have too much inventory and it's too slow of a seller. Send these reports to your marketing team, and that way the marketing team can have more control over what inventory is needing from them. We have a quick question. What do you recommend for the marketing plan to push overstock products? For example, lightning deals, coupons, lower price. What did I forget? Yeah, lower price, coupons, lightning deals. Some people have already turned off their ads. So even starting a PPC campaign, lowering the price to be not just competitive, but something that's extremely that's going to catch someone's eye, right? So if your competitors are selling it for $20, maybe you sell it for $15, and it's a real quick flash sale. And so PPC campaigns, I would say you might have to, if you're just lowering the price, that probably won't work. You might have to throw some PPC dollars at it just to get it out there. Also, you might be able to do a Facebook flash sale, for example, anything like that. You might be able to push it to your email audience. Say, hey, we're clearing out old inventory, flash sale. This is a crazy price, 75% off or 60% off. Push it that way. A lot of people don't utilize their email list either. So if you have an email list, you might as well, it's a free way to potentially get rid of some inventory. All right. Let's jump back over. So I really quickly wanted to discuss about a few best practices. We're getting close to wrapping up, but I did want to discuss a few best practices. You just really have to get better at marketing. So we'll dive into some best practices and how to look at inventory, and then we'll be wrapping up. And again, if you have any questions that come up, type them in the chat or put them in the Q&A. All right, so the thing that you need to look at is and this is something that Amazon's not looking at, is doing a daily adjusted velocity. What that means is that you are factoring your stock outs into your calculations. So if you've stocked out, we'll go here. If you've stocked out, we want to see that you've stocked out. We don't want to do our calculation based on total number of sales. We want to do it based on daily velocity. So if I'm looking at 30 days worth of sales, right, my 30 days worth of sales, what I want to do is I want to make sure that if I was stocked out for 10 of those 30 days, I only want to look at the 20 days that I actually had inventory in stock. That's what SoStocked is doing. But regardless of the system that you're using, you should be looking at what are your average sales if you would not have stocked out, or what are your average sales if you would not have done a huge sale with an influencer, right? Because sometimes we'll have a sales spike, and that might be calculated into our equation, and it would cause us to purchase more inventory than necessary, right? Or you have last year's sales. You also need to be factoring in, if you're looking at last year's sales, this is the one that gets you into trouble. You might remember what happened 30 days ago, but you might not have remembered what happened a year ago. So when you're doing your Christmas calculations, you need to also factor in your stock outs during that time. So if I stocked out, I want to actually do, let's see if we can find a stock out. If I stocked out, I actually want to use that as part of my calculation. You can see here, this is a stock out. We are adding what we think you would have done if you hadn't. We're looking at the average number of units, right? And that's how you want to look at your inventory. A couple of questions. You said, I'm going to skip this one for now, save it to the end. And then any advice on improving your IPI? Yeah, increasing your sell-through should be the biggest focus, increasing your sell-through and removing the excess inventory. If you're, this is, again, something to focus on, especially if your IPI is getting low, and especially if you sell products, that take up a lot of storage space. If you're concerned with that, I have a webinar that I did about increasing your IPI limits or focusing on IPI limits. You can check that out on our YouTube. This is not necessarily talking about that, but that webinar will go over all of the major points of IPI and ways to improve that. But sell-through is going to be a major factor in helping you to get that score up, as is excess inventory, which is two things that we are focused on right now. Okay. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was min-max restocking. Really quickly, as a concept, min-max restocking is this concept of setting a minimum, right? We could say, 15 days is my minimum. I want to keep at least 15 days worth of inventory in stock. I never want to go below 15 days worth of inventory, and I never want to go, say, above 60 days. What's going to happen is that this actually helps to automate your orders. It's going to help you to pass this task off to your VAs so that your VAs know how much to send in and when to send in more inventory. So min-max restocking is something that we adopted some time ago, and it is extremely helpful, especially in this case where where this new storage type has a lot to do with avoiding stockouts and also not overstocking. So let me show you really quickly how that concept works, if you're not familiar. So let's say we'll go into transfer schedule. Here we can use in units or in number of days. I recommend doing your min-max in number of days because it's going to fluctuate based on your sales. So you can come in and you can say that you never want to go below 15 days worth of inventory. You can also do that setting in your warehouse, and then you never want to go above 60. So what the software is going to do, it's going to tell you when you get to, when you get close to that 15 days, it's going to tell you to ship inventory in so that by the time that inventory should be arriving, you're hitting that 15 days. Then it's going to tell you to stock up to your maximum, which is 60 days, and then sell through to your minimum, stock up to your maximum. right? So that is min-max restocking. It helps you to have a good turnover. So you can set your turnover. You can even do this, 45 days, whatever you want, but it helps you to set what, helps you to essentially increase your turnover if you would like, if that's something that you're working on, which everyone should potentially be working on that now. Min-max restocking is a good rule of thumb for how to systematically know what to send in when. And of course, if you've got sales, you would be putting sales into that calculation. If we say Prime Day, right, we want to go in and we want to add Prime Day. We can say, okay, on Prime Day, which I think it's now the 21st and 22nd, on Prime Day, I'm going to sell 500 units. It'll do that calculation, but it'll also add that 500 units to that calculation as well, so that you're sending in exactly what is needed. Of course, if Amazon doesn't allow you to do that, that's another story. But that is essentially what we've built the inventory timeline for. And so you've got these tools that are working together. You've got min-max restocking, and then you've got this inventory timeline. And we talked about the marketing team sending all that information to the inventory team. The inventory team will then plug this in, see what will happen. They can look on this timeline. It's actually showing them all of the shipments that need to take place, all of the depletion of inventory as time goes on, when shipments are arriving, so that you have a real visual of what's going on. Really becoming, again, I can't stress enough, becoming better at inventory management really is now becoming a team job. So these tools were built to help you to do that. And even if you're not using these tools, getting a marketing plan, organizing that marketing plan, we have that little freebie that I can send to you, the marketing plan, which essentially helps to get the marketing team to put everything on paper as to what they're going to be doing, what they're planning to do, so the inventory team can check that against what they already have and stop them on certain things that may be stocked out. All right, I do think that we have another quick question. Let's see. It says, might not be related to the current topic, but to those who are importing from China, are you also experiencing record surges in container costs and 1 month delays from cargo ready date to ETD China? Yeah, there's been a lot of delays. There's been a container shortage. So of course, supply and demand, when there's container shortages, when there's a shortage of something, the prices can increase on those as the value goes up. So there've been container shortages, and that's also causing those delays. So you'll see that, as we get through closer to 20, they think that it's going to start smoothing out 2022. But we will see these prices and these delays stretch out through third and fourth quarter is what people are estimating. And then what steps can I take to make sure our stock arrives on time? I would say having more backup inventory or buffer stock at your third-party warehouse. And then also you might have to consider, depending on the pricing and the cost, you might have to consider doing some air shipments of a portion. So you might want to be careful with the idea of putting everything into a boat and hoping that it arrives. I would say just, you can't necessarily guarantee that it's going to arrive on time, but you can put in some of these fail safes, like extra buffer stock at your local warehouse, or air shipments, or leaving some extra inventory at your warehouse in case you have to do an air shipment. That's something that we are working on right now. Is we're going to leave a portion at our Chinese warehouse, ship most of it via sea, and then if it doesn't arrive on time, we have a certain time when we can say, okay, let's pull the trigger and we'll just ship this amount of inventory via air. We won't do it if the shipment arrives on time, but if it doesn't, then we have that extra card that we can play. So it's just thinking in terms of all scenarios, and how could you be ahead of that? How could you be ahead of those problems? All right, I said tried shifting to ports and it doesn't Yeah, it was closed down due to COVID for 2 weeks. Does anyone have any insights on when the ports will normalize? Yeah, so after probably after Chinese New Year. That's what they're kind of thinking, you know, toward the beginning to second quarter of 2022, I think. But you know, that answer can change as we move forward, unfortunately. All right. Okay, and the last thing that I wanted to kind of touch on was simultaneous forecasting. So this is something that you're going to have to be good at and just to keep in mind. So simultaneous forecasting, you're going to be wanting to watch everything. So you've got, you know, your calculations of how long it takes for your shipments to arrive. You place your orders with your supplier and how long does it take for your orders to actually be able to arrive. But then also how long does it take to transfer that inventory. And the third thing to think is how long does it take to, you know, if you've got stuff waiting at a Chinese warehouse, if you can have your Chinese supplier keep some of that inventory, they can keep that inventory for you, and sometimes they won't charge you for up to 3 months. You can keep that as a third resource. So start thinking with, you know, when you have inventory at FBA, you know, you also want inventory at your local warehouse, but then once you move that inventory out of your local warehouse, you may want to take inventory from your Chinese warehouse. But to mitigate some of those costs, think about utilizing your supplier to hold some of that inventory. The other thing that you can potentially work out is that you pay your 30% deposit and then you only pay the other 70% on the inventory that you ship out. So while they're holding this inventory, you're potentially keeping some of that cash flow a little more fluid. Excuse me. Keeping some of that. Oh. Sorry. Wow, I lost my voice here. So you're potentially keeping that a little more fluid as you move forward. Questions? Excuse me, that was a quite dramatic frog in my throat. So you need to make sure that your inventory solutions are solving all these problems for you. And that's essentially what you want to be focusing on. Currently, sostock.com is available for life for $79 a month. That's going to be changing very soon, but you can go ahead and grab, I'm going to drop a link in the chat. All right, you can just go ahead and grab that link. If you have any questions, do let me know. Any further questions, you can go to stock@sostock.com as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end this off. It looks like there's no more questions, and I'll send out the replay. I know it was a lot to take in, but hopefully this helps you to have a better idea of what to do moving forward. All right, thanks so much, guys. Thanks for coming.